And speaking of tech, here's my stellar segue. Technology has always been a hot button issue for a lot of doomsday kind of predictions.
Whoop.
Like I had mentioned earlier, like the advent of chipped credit cards was a big one. I know, like, and like for some reason, like the barcode, mark of the beast stuff, like this was a constant for me in my own denomination. I know that the Jehovah's Witness had other kind of things that they would focus on, but we put a poll question in the comments about whether you believe it is the end times, and we have a caller. So I would love to talk to Thomas, calling in, a fellow Canadian. He says he definitely thinks we are in the end times. Thomas, please inform us on why we are in the end times.
Yeah, I think the Bible has a whole bunch of evidence to suggest we're in it. I'll start by, do you guys know how old the oldest person is that lives today? What's the oldest person?
Last I checked, it was somebody who was like 120-ish.
Yeah, I thought it was 120. I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah, so after the flood, God said to Noah, he said, there will come a time when the spirit of God will no longer abide in man, and the lifespan will be 120. Then Jesus I'll jump to this. In Revelations, you guys believe in climate change, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't think to believe it, just is, yeah.
Right, I mean,
it just is. Yeah.
I don't believe in that.
So in Revelations, it says that
Thomas, I'm just gonna put you on mute for just 1 second. Your background is like really, really windy. I'm not sure if you are outside or if there's somehow you could kind of get into a more secluded area where we can hear you a little bit better. It's not too bad, but it is pretty windy. Just letting you know, it's a little hard to hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, you're coming in clear. There's just a little bit of background, but it's okay. Let's go on to this Bible prophecy.
Okay, sorry. So in Revelations, it says that the sun will scorch the earth and dry up the Euphrates River. Have you guys seen the Euphrates River lately?
Yes.
I probably could Google search the Euphrates River. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. In the last decade, it has dried up. It's done. We've seen this in the last decade. Even 2016, if you Google in 2016, it was a beautiful river, and now it's dried. And Revelation says,
you don't think that there was rivers that dried up back in biblical times? There weren't rivers that stopped flowing back then also? I mean, rivers stop flowing all the time.
I'm not going to say that you're wrong in some of these things. Right. Yes, people lived to 120, usually tops. Yes, rivers dried up. What is to say that like
I thought the 120 years was the amount of time God was going to allow wickedness on the earth, and that's why he was giving him 120 years to build the ark. It wasn't the limit. Right.
I think it's both. If I'm recalling, I could be wrong. Someone can correct me, but like I think
Thomas is right. Evidence, y'all.
Look at the actual biblical evidence here. I think Thomas is right that there is somewhere in the Bible where it does mention that man will only live to be 120 years old. What is to think that wasn't just the oldest person that had ever lived like 6,000 years ago anyway? But regardless, I'm trying to say that like these events, I'm not going to argue that some of these things happen, that even a broken clock is right twice a day. What about these things are different, or like why is it this famine and not the famine that happened 700 years ago or 6,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago? Right. These things happen all the time, and we've had
Joseph
lots of
had to flee into Egypt. There was wasn't there a famine then? I mean, when
what is the difference between it being a biblical prophecy that's a 1 in 1 million chance of happening, or if it's just a common kind of commentary on what happens in the world? Why is this particular like famine or drought more convincing to you than the ones that have happened in time immemorial and way before we started documenting?
Yeah, no, for sure. But I'm just pointing out the fact that it says the lifespan will be 120, and then they nailed the Euphrates River right on, and they say it'll happen in the end times, right? That's the point. Lots of rivers have dried up, but the Euphrates River hasn't dried up. And Revelation says...
Well, I haven't seen any rivers turn to blood yet either. So it's like you're gonna like I do hate this expression, but it does feel like it's a case of cherry picking. Like I'm gonna look on this big diagram, I'm gonna find the one thing that fits, that I can fit into the thing that's happening now, and I'm gonna call that a prophecy. I think my biggest problem with most of the prophecies in the Bible is that they're so vague. And I could think of 100 ways off the top of my head how I could improve any of these prophecies. So yeah, the Euphrates is it's an area of the world that has a lot of, extreme weather patterns, I'll just say. Like that's the reason why they had floods and then famines. Like it's an area of the earth that does that. It's not really that what's the word I'm thinking? It's not that fantastical. It's not a really supernatural kind of claim to say that there's going to be a famine or a drought at this time. Why not mention the river in China? The Bible says nothing about China. Like, why not something else?
More specific.
Because it's a Middle Eastern river. But Google 1986 Lake Nyos, Cameroon, blood red. It has happened. But
and it was actually shown to be blood. Not just a mineral in the water?
It was oxidized. It was iron,
bacteria,
right? But it turns blood red.
Algae.
Yeah.
Blood red. That's the point.
Okay, so my
question.
No, I understand where you're going with this. So like there's a lot of like these physical signs that you see in the world. So where does this end for you? What is the step in which you're going to say,
what's the end goal?
This is what I'm expecting to happen next. And if it doesn't happen, like where is your marker here for when you will be proven? You? Yeah, or like when is it proven wrong for you? Yeah, is there anything that could happen in the future here that will change your mind about whether these are actually prophecies coming true, or if they are just happenstances around the world and the Bible was making commentary on that just like we do?
I mean, I would hope it doesn't happen. I'm not excited about it. I mean, the Bible says you shouldn't be excited about it, but I mean, it certainly appears that way. I'm not saying it is what it is. I'm saying that it certainly looks that way, right?
Yeah, I do get that. I do get that. I was also trained, I would say, to see the things around me in the world to be evidence and to confirm to this belief I had. But then it's important to know where your markers are for when you would change your mind. So I think even if you don't have an answer now, I would just say, like, to take away from the call, like, what would be something that would happen that would change your mind on whether these are prophecies or not? It's just something to think about, because otherwise you can look at anything that's going on in the world and, make it fit into it, because the Bible is a very vague book. I mean, I don't know if you think that. I think a lot of us have come to think that. And even though a lot of religious people will say that there's different ways to interpret it and that, but what is something that would be your marker for knowing when you can, or for deciding if you've been wrong on something? So I don't know if you have an answer right now, but that's just maybe something to think about, right? Do you have anything to comment about that?
No, but I think it's really important that you figure out how you feel about that at what point, because I wish my grandparents would have asked themselves that question, while they were telling me, like, oh, I'm going to be here to see Armageddon. Well, guess what? You're not, but you spent your whole life telling others about it and that it was right around the corner, and now you're gone. And am I going to be the same? Am I going to be, going to my grave at 90 years old going, well, damn, I spent my entirety of my life worried about this cataclysmic end, and just life as usual. I kind of wish I would have been able to get some of those years back, but at least I have it for now. And I hope that maybe through your, what you just told him, Erin, that maybe he could maybe do the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, right? But I got two more really good ones. But first, I want to say, you guys probably know this. You were Christians. What Peter says in 2 Peter, where he says about there will come scoffers in the end days. He says, "Will scoff at one the age of
one of my favorite, most common things." Sorry, Thomas, I just interrupted because that's a very common one that we hear about. Yeah, in the end, there'll be scoffers and people who are tickling of the ears or something like that, right?
Yeah, but what the point is what he says, right? So he says 1 would be the age of the earth, 2 would be Noah's flood, and 3 is what you guys said when I was listening, is we've been waiting for this forever, right? When Jesus, we've been saying this forever. And then he goes on to say that a day is like 1,000 years to God. But then he says they'll pervert the gospel or the epistles of Paul, right? And if we've seen this, like so many people contort the words of Paul, especially Christians, right? They use his words to persecute others and be judgmental.
Do you know what? If I was going to start a religion, Thomas, if I was going to start a religion, I would make sure that one of the things that I wrote in my new book was, you cannot change my book.
Right. Don't.
And also, people who criticize this are the bad guys.
Oh, so you mean what the Bible does?
I'm just take that idea, and I'm not saying that the Bible, I'm not making any claims about the Bible. It's just a thought about these things. I think it is good to look into, the scholarship about Bibles and who wrote what and when and why. But the idea of like, what is the scripture? What is this verse doing? What is the point of this? And it's not always
context of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is a really common one that gets thrown at skeptics, is that, people who are scoffers are going to, they're going to be the ones who are burning forever. But understanding a little bit more about psychology, or like how humans interact and how people can write things that are polemical against the people who disagree with you. It takes the sting out of that a lot. So, I mean, I appreciate that you're looking into it. I appreciate that you're reading and you're trying to understand it the best you can. I would just say, keep looking and think about that marker, I would say, of how would you falsify your own belief with this, that it is the end times.
I will for sure. I got two last ones, okay?
Actually, no, Thomas, actually, I really do appreciate you calling, and I appreciate you waiting. We do actually have some other calls to get to tonight. Please, though, if you want, call in again, because I think like you're very nice to talk to, and I would love to talk to you about this more. And if I'm hosting in the future, I would love for you to call back in and tell me if you had thought about that question a little bit. Ooh, and give me what your marker would be to kind of falsify your own beliefs. But drive safely, or wherever you are. Be safe, and have a good rest of your night. And happy Thanksgiving, fellow Canadian. Yes, I know we're weird in Canada. We have our Thanksgiving this weekend, so it's a thing. It's a whole thing. We like to do things differently.
It's a whole thing. That's
right. All right. So I don't know, Ryan, were you convinced by any of that?
Oh gosh, no, you couldn't. God would literally have to convince me. That would be what convinced me.
But I can feel for the anxiety of it. Right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You have a book, and you already kind of believe the main core propositions of this book, and then it says that like you'll know this is true if it rains, and like that's a pretty broad kind of stroke to put on like how I'm going to prove this.
Right.
And like, famine and droughts are not like a common thing, but they're not supernatural. They do happen.
Right. These are cyclical things, unfortunately, that happen from time to time with nature.
Yeah.
Just how it works.
And like if we can zoom back a little bit and like not just read from the historical account of the Bible, as they would, like, I'm putting myself back onto like the worldview, but like look at the earth as like an entire, like the whole geological history and stuff. Like we have lots and lots of records of these horrible
right. How many times
cataclysmic events that happened with weather.
I had no idea how many times like the earth is just like rebooted. Like, several times it's rebooted, and I had no freaking idea.
Yeah.
Because we're like young Earth. Is that what they're called? Young Earth creation.
Yeah, young Earth creation.
They thought the Earth is only 6,000 years old. So when I found out that oh my God, I was like, wait, hold up.
It's a paradigm shift, right? It's like, okay, so yeah,
you feel like this. You feel like this tiny little teensy little speck.
Which can be good and bad, right? Like nothing matters, or like nothing matters.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. When you think about like what we can do to cause issues with our climate and whatnot. So then you do think like, oh gosh, you know, we are this little tiny blip, but could we make this huge catastrophe happen because, you know, we don't do what we need to do?
That's a whole different thing that like we didn't even touch on, is like this whole idea of, I don't think the Jehovah's Witnesses are doing it too much, but like this whole forcing of the end times thing that's happening. Like it's bizarre to me that you would think that you have this, you know, this creator of the world on omnipresent, omniscient God that who's going to take care of everything, so we don't need to. There's like this dual belief happening where you think God's going to handle it, but also I need to do things. I'm going to elect this, and you know, I'm going to do these things to try to force the end times. Like it's a very real thing that is happening all over the place. But as like I said, it's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, it is. But Jehovah's Witnesses, like they're always kind of forcing their hand, and they always seem to feel like something that they do could cause a reaction that will set into motion God's plan. So they do feel like they have this effect on, I mean, they really do on their own members, but they feel like they affect the world, which is a bit like strange.